Now, I told you a week or two ago that Kevin McCarthy was having a difficult time getting all of the Republicans in the House on board to support him as Speaker of the House. Now, I did get a recent update before I went live about this as well, and I was able to add that to this as well. But I want to start back just to show you what some of the concerns were and how much of a struggle Kevin McCarthy actually has had. Now, I want to give a shout out here to Case Study QB for this clip. Let's take a look back and see why people were not so quick and willing to vote for Kevin per se, and the trouble he's had along the way.
All right. Also this morning, Republican leader Kevin McCarthy is working the phones today, literally, in hopes of locking in more support for next week's vote for House Speaker. It's happening on Tuesday in just a matter of days from now. CNN has learned that he's scheduled a conference call this afternoon to try to iron out potential rule changes ahead of the new Congress on Tuesday. CNN's Melanie Zanona is live on Capitol Hill. Melanie, what are we learning about? I know there's been a lot of good negotiations happening behind the scenes as McCarthy is trying to get to those votes. Some members want these rule changes. What exactly are they debating over behind the scenes?
Okay, so the big debate here is over this tool known as the motion to vacate. That would force a floor vote on ousting the sitting speaker. Currently, the majority of the entire conference has to agree to use that rule, but McCarthy's critics want to change it so that any single member can force a floor vote on deposing the sitting speaker. Up until this point, McCarthy has not wanted to budge on that issue. However, as he has struggled to lock down the speaker's votes here, I am told that in private conversations this week, he has made an offer to his critics that he is willing to agree to a lower threshold than what it currently is. In fact,
let's hold on and let's take a look here at concessions to try to clinch speakership, lowering the number of votes needed to oust a sitting speaker. Currently need a majority to call to vacate the speaker's chair. McCarthy is considering lowering the number to 5 votes, and Representative Matt Gaetz and Ralph Norman say that is still too high. So remember what I've told you before, they can always try to come in and change the rules. And sometimes these things do happen. We've seen this happen, whether it's the Republican Party or Democratic Party. They can try to come in and just change the rules. So let's continue. I have more news about this, but let's continue.
One of the numbers that's come up in conversations has been a 5-person threshold. So potentially a really big concession from McCarthy here. But of course, time is running out and it's unclear if even that could get him enough votes for Speaker on January 3rd, Caitlin.
Yeah, the 5-person threshold would be incredibly notable. We talked to Fred Upton in recent days. He's leaving Congress, but he said he does not believe McCarthy should agree to these terms. He only has a few days left to really get the votes that he needs. It's not clear that there's any alternative to him, I should say. We haven't seen anyone who's been able to garner a lot of support. So where does it seem headed, as of Friday, December 30th, before we hit Tuesday?
Well, Caitlin, I think we're going to learn a lot later this afternoon. As you mentioned, there is a critical conference call that McCarthy has convened between some of these different wings of the party. I do suspect that motion to vacate, that tool we were talking about, that will come up. McCarthy is going to try to find a sweet spot that will essentially, appease enough of his critics to allow them to vote for him without alienating the moderates in his party. But January 3rd is fast approaching. Members aren't here right now, so that makes it also more difficult for McCarthy to sort of round up the votes. So it is very possible that we could see this thing go to multiple ballots for the first time since 1923.
Well, she was right about that.
All right, we'll be watching closely. Melanie Zanona, thank you.
Okay, so that was that. Kevin's still struggling there to get the number of votes that he needs in order to get that speakership. And I want to take a look back here to show you that there were 9 hard Republicans that were willing to hold their vote for Kevin McCarthy here. So I want to go into this piece here from Insider. 9 hardline Republicans are willing to support Kevin McCarthy's bid for Speaker of the House, demanding more concessions. So the key word here is concessions. My, this is just what happened with, or what we were trying to get happen with the squad, right? Forcing the vote, withholding their vote for Nancy Pelosi unless they get Medicare for all on the floor for a vote. And by the way, the concession was one thing: bring Medicare for all to the floor for a vote. They had more items here. Let's go on. There's Kevin McCarthy looking like a simp. Okay. McCarthy spoke to the group in a conference call on Sunday. Politico and CNN reported the House GOP then announced several concessions in a provisional rules package. Now listen to this. However, 9 lawmakers said in a letter that they will continue to be in a letter that there continue to be missing commitments with respect to virtually every component of our treaties, and no means to measure whether promises are kept or broken. They were even willing to make sure that he put something in the concessions that would make sure that he actually would keep the promise. You see how this works? They made demands and then they said, wait a second, you say you agree to this. We need something in writing that shows that you're not going to break this promise. They were even willing to go that far. The Democrats weren't even willing to go. The progressives are just willing to take Joe Biden at his word. They were just willing to take Nancy Pelosi at her word. Well, they said they're going to fight for us. They said they're going to push for this. They're just taking it a word. They wouldn't even push back like this. They didn't push at all, but they weren't even willing to push back and add that extra step. Let's go on. The letter was signed by Representative Scott Perry, Paul Gosar, Dan Bishop, Chip Roy, Andy Harris, Andrew Clyde, and Representative-elect Andy Ogles, Anna Paulina Luna, and Eli Crane. Political reporter Olivia Beaver tweeted the full text of the letter here. Almost 10 Republicans who haven't said how they plan to vote on January 3rd write in a new letter, despite some progress achieved. Mr. McCarthy's statement comes almost impossibly late to address continued deficiencies ahead of the opening of the 118th Congress on January 3rd. So what was interesting here as well is that they acknowledged that, I didn't mean to do that. Let me go back to the thing here. They acknowledged that there was some progress that was achieved throughout their agreement with Kevin McCarthy, but then they go on to say that it wasn't enough. That's how you play hardball. That's how you play hardball. Let's go on. With the vote looming on Tuesday, it's unclear whether McCarthy has the support he needs, which has emboldened some lawmakers to seek considerable influence over the rules package that governs the position. Among the rules being thrashed out is the procedure for ousting a House Speaker, something that some conservative hardliners want to make far easier. Currently, the threshold to force a floor vote on vacating the Speaker's chair is a party majority. On Sunday's call, McCarthy agreed to set the threshold to 5 lawmakers, but some GOP hardliners want that figure to be as low as 1 person. Matt Gaetz, who has long opposed McCarthy for Speaker, indicated he might waver if McCarthy made a credible offer of a 1-person threshold. So even then, at this point, Matt Gaetz was willing to waver a little bit if he changed it to 1 person. After a poorer than expected showing in the 2022 midterm elections, the Republican Party holds a thin majority in the House, 222, 213, giving each Republican lawmaker considerable influence. Well. Other concessions from McCarthy include a promise to make sure committees closely reflect the ideological makeup of our conference. McCarthy has also promised to set up a House Judiciary Select Subcommittee in order to scrutinize the weaponization of the federal government. The demand comes amid stated Republican concerns over the politicization of federal agencies and is expected to hone in on the Biden administration. So these are just some of the things that they were requesting of Kevin McCarthy there. And They weren't really playing around here. Now, as you know, or as you may not know, that vote did happen today. The young woman in the CNN clip was correct. It did go multiple rounds. And we are now past the third round. Listen to this, because this is interesting. Republican McCarthy heads for defeat in third U.S. House Speaker vote. So this was when they were going right into the third round. This is crazy, right? Republican Kevin McCarthy's bid to become Speaker of the House ran into trouble in a series of votes on Tuesday. Who would have thunk? As hardline conservatives rebelled against him, leaving the new Republican majority in turmoil in what would prove to be a brutal slowdown between hardliners and the overwhelming majority of House Republicans. McCarthy twice fell short of the 218 vote majority needed to succeed Democrat Nancy Pelosi as Speaker. It was the first time in a century that the House failed to elect a speaker on the first vote. And that could have been us. That could have been the progressives in the House forcing the vote against Nancy Pelosi. These would be the headlines about them right now. Those would have been the headlines about, look at the squad holding firm, asking Nancy Pelosi for some concessions and not just agreeing to vote for her just because they're a part of her party. That was the whole point, right? The whole point of Justice Democrats. Let's go on. McCarthy also appeared to lack enough support as the voting went into a third round on Tuesday afternoon, with at least 20 Republicans voting for popular conservative representative Jim Jordan to try to block McCarthy, even though Jordan did not put himself forward as a candidate. He sure didn't. And I wouldn't say that Jim Jordan would be any better. Jim Jordan is the same one who kept things pretty hush about the sex scandal from the Ohio wrestling team. Jim Jordan knew about that. Let's all remember. So let me tell you how this is. You see how this is working? Jim Jordan didn't even have to bring himself forward. He was recommended. I'm going to show you where the recommendation came from. He was recommended. And just like that, 20 Republicans said, actually, I'm willing to support Jim instead of Kevin McCarthy. I mean, I can't make this up. I can't. You see what happens sometimes? Sometimes all it takes is a few, 4 or 5 people or a squad to put that pressure to get other people to jump on board and say, hey, wait a minute, maybe we do have other options here. Just because Kevin McCarthy was the one that was selected doesn't mean we have to vote for him. Maybe we should push someone else forward. See how that works? Now, McCarthy showed no sign of withdrawing from the contest after the second ballot. We stay in it until we win. It will eventually change. Has it? Let's see what happened after that. Let's see what happened after that. Because here is the results after the third round. Now, this is from Now This. Listen to this, you guys. Third time was not the charm. The House was expected to vote for a fourth time after Kevin McCarthy once again failed to secure enough votes for House Speaker. Let's go ahead and cue up this beautiful bean footage.
McCarthy. Gomez. Jeffries.
And pause. So as you could see, right there, when we get to the end, at this point, it was 210 votes for Hakeem Jeffries, 202 for McCarthy, and 20. Those are the 20 votes there for Jim Jordan. Notice there's no present or others here. Notice nobody votes present when it's something like this. That's really interesting, right? Interesting, huh? Of course, AOC had to make her spotlight. She had to make sure she's seen. 20 for Jim Jordan. So this is, look, what can I say, you guys? What can I say? The comments are really funny, by the way. LOL. Now, how did Jim Jordan's name get brought up to begin with? Let's hear about this speech here from Matt Gaetz, because he's actually the one that put this in motion. Matt Gaetz basically did what we would have wanted AOC to do in reference to Nancy Pelosi. Listen to this.
Florida, rise.
To nominate a candidate for Speaker of the House.
The gentleman is recognized.
Well, sometimes we have to do jobs that we don't really want to do. And sometimes we have to do jobs that we are called to do. And so, my colleagues, I rise to nominate the most talented, hardest working member of the Republican conference, who just gave a speech with more vision than we have ever heard from the alternative. I'm nominating Jim Jordan. Jim Jordan is humble, perhaps today humble to a fault.
Did you see the way that he did that? Look at the watch the way he does this. Watch the courage.
Hardest working member of the Republican conference, who just gave a speech with more vision than we have ever heard from the alternative. I'm nominating Jim Jordan. Jim Jordan is humble, perhaps today humble to a fault. Maybe the right person for the job of Speaker of the House isn't someone who wants it so bad. Maybe the right person for the job of Speaker of the House isn't someone who has sold shares of themselves for more than a decade to get it.
Why couldn't AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Jamal Bowman, Ilhan Omar, why couldn't any of them have made the same kind of speech against Nancy Pelosi? Look at the way he just stood up and said it. If he was afraid, he didn't come across afraid. Look at that, the boldness. Why couldn't they do that? Why couldn't they do that? No guts at all.
Maybe Jim Jordan is the right person for Speaker of the House because he is not beholden to the lobbyists and special interests who have corrupted this place and corrupted this nation under the leadership of both Republicans and Democrats.
There we go with progressive line. This is exactly what I've been trying to warn you guys about. Look who's using some of the same rhetoric that Bernie Sanders has used, that the progressives in the House have used. He's saying the same thing. The corruption, the lobbyists. How dare you listen, Jamal Bowman, because I'm going to show you something from him too. Jamal Bowman, AOC. How dare you let Matt Gaetz take this message? How dare you? Such a mess. Listen to this. Call out the corruption.
Who have corrupted this place and corrupted this nation under the leadership of both Republicans and Democrats.
Republicans and Democrats. You notice he mentioned both. Jesus. This should be an utmost embarrassing moment for the squad. Very embarrassing moment. Let's go on.
Maybe Jim Jordan would be the right person for Speaker of the House because he wouldn't fight us when we try to get a term limits bill on the floor. Maybe Jim Jordan would be the right person because he wouldn't fight us when we try to put a balanced budget on the floor and vote for it. And maybe Jim Jordan is the right person because he would endorse the plan that was built by the Texas delegation to finally secure our border. Mr. Jordan said in his nomination that there are certain bills that we have to pass to fix the problem. The challenge is the alternative has been someone voting for the very bills that have caused these problems.
Oh no, how dare he call out the way that people vote on these bills? AOC, I'm looking at you. Rashida Tlaib, I'm looking at you. Ilhan Omar, I'm looking at you, because you guys don't call out the way that some of your colleagues in the Democratic Party have been voting against bills that affected legislation. Hell, you guys don't even vote that way sometimes. Isn't this interesting? Do you guys feel like we're living in a Twilight episode? I feel like I'm living in an episode of the Twilight Zone. That's what it feels like right now. And I'm just waiting. I'm waiting for Rod Sterling to walk through the door and say, you have entered the fifth dimension. Just waiting for that. Hasn't happened yet. Hasn't happened.
Mr. Jordan says that we cannot accept legislation like the omnibus, and I fully agree. And if Jim Jordan were Speaker of the House, if he were the leader of the Republican team, we wouldn't have that circumstance choking the economy of our country, increasing inflation, and diminishing the prospects of a better life for our fellow Americans. And finally, Mr. Jordan said we must engage in rigorous oversight. Every one of my Republican colleagues knows that the person who can lead that oversight effort, who works on it every day, who has the skill and the talent and the will, is Jim Jordan. I'm nominating him and I'm voting for him.
For someone, considering the allegations that he's had brought against him, well, they say that he can't be charged with it, whatever. But the allegations that he's had brought against him in reference to trafficking underage girl, the fact that he just stood up like that with no fear, no qualms about it, even though he's in the minority in reference to supporting Kevin McCarthy, it was just like he didn't even care. You know, it's just almost like this instinct that he had that I really don't care what people are going to say about me and my party. This is how I feel, and this is what I'm standing up for. Does that sound familiar to you? Isn't that what we told the squad to do? Not care what the other establishments were saying in their party and to fight for the principles and the morals that they signed up and they pledged to? Isn't what that was they were supposed to do, right? Now, somebody asked this question for me. Answer this question. Why is it that he can do it? And not just him, but the other Republicans that refuse to support Kevin McCarthy. Why is it that they can do so without that same type of fear? But we can't even get the squad to vote together on a piece of legislation as a block when it actually matters. I want to know the answer to that. If you are watching and you're conservative, I know some of you are conservative. If you're watching and you're conservative, please tell me or explain this to me tonight on the call-in. Tell me why those 20 people that voted for Jim Jordan, tell me why they don't have that same type of fear. Tell me. I would really like to know. Now, this goes on because Glenn Greenwald had something to say about this too, and we haven't even gotten to the Glenn Greenwald story just yet. But he had something to say about this because, you know, Jamal Bowman and his corny self, he decided to make a joke about this situation with Kevin McCarthy's speakership. So Jamal Bowman goes on to say, GOP leader doesn't have the votes. We're in a good mood. Now, here's Jamal Bowman in the picture here. I think that's Summer Lee and other Democrat politicians. We're in a good mood. This message is coming from Jamal Bowman, guys. It's coming from Jamal Bowman. GOP leader doesn't have the votes. Let's talk about this for a second. This has to be one of the most clownish gestures and tweets that I've seen from Jamal Bowman. Why is that? Why is Jamal Bowman bragging about the GOP not having the votes for Kevin McCarthy when we ask people like Jamal Bowman and other members of the squad to do the same damn thing for Nancy Pelosi? See, this is Jamal Bowman showing his true colors without realizing that he's doing it. He puts out some tweets sometimes, and I don't even think he thinks before he tweets these things. Why is he cheering that on? Why is he making fun of it? Look, doesn't have the votes. We're in a good mood. Why are you making fun of that, Jamal Bowman? That's what we told you to do. This is exactly what we asked you to do. So the joke's on you, because here you have Republicans who are willing to force the vote against the candidate for Speaker for House, which you weren't willing to do. So the joke is on you, dummy. Now, Glenn Greenwald had something to say about this as well, because this made no sense to me. I'm like, is he really that tone deaf? So Glenn Greenwald goes on to say, the GOP holdouts are doing what the squad never had the courage to do. Use their power to defy party leadership in order to extract concessions. Not sure why. It's a source of pride to show how you always submit to party orders like good soldiers. Not much dignity in that. Yes, spot on, because this right here is Glenn Greenwald letting you know that Jamal Bowman is revealing himself in a way that lets you know at the end of the day, he was going to back the Democratic Party regardless, boo. This whole idea of him running as a progressive to push back against the Democratic Party establishment, that was never going to happen, guys. That's Jamal Bowman letting you know he was always going to back his party, regardless. He had no intention of holding his vote for Nancy Pelosi, even though he alluded to that on CNN, him and Cori Bush. They gave people this idea, this tiny bit of hope that maybe we will not vote for her. You guys will have to wait and see. But there's Jamal Bowman revealing his damn self, letting you know right then and there that was never his intention. He was always going to back his party and support the party regardless. And he had no intention of pushing back on Democrat establishment. Jamal Bowman is a party loyalist. I'm going to stop calling him progressive. He need to stop calling his own self progressive. I've told you guys this before. Out of all the people, all the squad members, Jamal Bowman is the weakest link. Now, let's go on, because Breonna Joy Gray called this out as well. She said it's wild to be listening mainstream coverage of how Republicans are forcing the vote and how the far right is getting major concessions because Republicans can only afford to lose 4 votes when the left was patronized relentlessly for pointing out the squad could do the same. All those people who criticized the Force the Vote town hall, the strategy, which comes straight from the DSA handbook, all of those people who criticize this strategy, do you see it working now? Because see, the strategy does work. Now they see that. Now, some people already know are going to double down because they look kind of foolish now to come back and say, oh, damn, Force the Vote was right. I should have participated in that Force the Vote town hall after all. Some people have too much pride to do that. So some of them are not going to come back and say it. So I'll say it for them. You were wrong. You were dead wrong. It does work. And this time it's working, but it's working for the Republican Party. Because you see, they're able to pick away at Kevin McCarthy to get what they want and what they need. The few squad members, they couldn't even ask for one thing: the vote for Medicare for all. People act like we were asking for a kidney. People act like we were asking, go ask Nancy Pelosi if she'll give us a kidney and if she'll give us a will. All we asked for was a vote. They couldn't even do that. Spineless, weak, pathetic sellouts. That's what they are. Now you tell me, how is it that someone like Matt Gaetz, who is also corporate, who is also corrupt, how he can take that same damn strategy from the DSA handbook and use it to get what he wants on the Republican side of things? But the people who come from DSA themselves, who are part of the DSA organization, those squad members, they can't even follow their own handbook. Make it make sense. I'm going to go to some of the comments. It's a hot mess. Mike says, if you force the vote, McCarthy will become speaker. Mike, I'll never forget it. Mike, I'll never forget it. Jeez. Good cookies. Yeah, but what does the parliamentarian think of this Sabby? We all know that their opinion is infallible. Thank you so much for the super sticker, Kimberly. Mary says the entire system is theater of distraction. In the end, the oligarchs that own these people make the decisions. Thank you for the super chat, Zach, the Celtics guy. Guess who blocked me on Sunday? Anna Kasparian, LOL. She's blocked me too. Yeah. I don't even know why she blocked me. I don't even think I ever even spoke to Anna. Adam says that money hard to say no to, Sabby. They don't care about any of us. They have great health care. They do. Sebastian, all they want is the benefits that comes with being a politician, like book deals, subsidies from podcasts, and etc. They got in. They got those benefits, boo. Let's go to those comments on Rockfin. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. I just checked Twitter. Jink ain't speak in 3 days. A man who usually got something to say about everything. Cedar is still on vacay. Hasn't tweeted since the second week of December. Time for the ratio bum rush, y'all. Grimm tweeted 2 minutes ago trying to say he never said that and he was always for force the vote. I said, didn't Bree had to convince you in a debate that Kevin wouldn't become speaker? Time voters use leverage. Yeah, I think Ryan Grimm needs to go back and look at his tweets. He needs to go back. He did say he did not support it. So we need to go back and find that episode, that Jimmy Dore episode that Ryan Grimm was on when he said he didn't support it.